When it comes to China, Amitabh, I always think of the last 30, 35 years in that relationship between India and China before Galwan happened and before, you saw this increased assertiveness of the Chinese along the line of actual control. Actually, we built a system that pretty much held the peace for those 3 decades. We had those agreements on the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas, a series of agreements that basically prevented any armed conflict, any military confrontation from taking place. I think the time has come to really assess not only the utility of those agreements and what really went wrong. Why should things have broken down? And I believe that the talks that we are holding with the Chinese in Ladakh, for instance, to seek de-escalation and the disengagement between the two sides should go on. I believe there is need to ensure that we do not have armed military conflict between India and China, because it's not going to help either side. I say this not because I'm a peacenik, not because I'm being unrealistic, but I understand, having dealt with China in those 3 decades, that there was utility in the system that we had built up. We were not friends with the Chinese. We remained adversaries, but we built a system that held the peace. And I think we should not abandon that completely and say, the last three decades were a waste of time. And we should be looking at, a very different period in our relationship with China. And I think the government has handled this with great maturity, because they haven't, the way there's been very studied reactions to what the Chinese do. There are measured responses. That is certainly the way to go. And we've kept the channels of communication open, and the whole system of, the relationships that we have with Russia, with China, as much as we have a very close partnership with the United States, I think it's important for India to maintain these channels of communication, to operate them, to keep them functioning all the time, because ultimately you must understand, India is really that middle country. It is much more than China, a middle country between all these, different factions. And I think that our strength derives from that, and we should be able to deploy that with great agility, with flexibility, and that's really, I think, the direction in which we must go.